The cargo ship New Horizon drifted through the black space between stars, its hull scarred from years of hauling supplies to the outer colonies. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his worn pilot chair, watching the endless darkness through the viewport. 23 years since Earth joined the Galactic Confederation, and humans were still treated like the poor cousins at a rich family dinner. Jake's communication screen buzzed with an incoming message. The face of Commander Lisa Bennett appeared, her usually calm expression tight with worry. She commanded one of Earth's few military vessels, the destroyer Liberty, and Jake had known her since their academy days. "Jake, I need to talk to you in person," Lisa said without greeting. "Meet me at Kepler Station when you finish your supply run." The screen went dark before Jake could respond. He frowned and checked his navigation charts. Kepler Station orbited the mining world of Kepler 442b, where human workers dug rare metals from the planet's crust. The work was dangerous and poorly paid, but it was one of the few jobs the Confederation gave to humans. 3 days later, Jake docked at Kepler Station. The place buzzed with activity as miners came and went, their faces covered in dust and exhaustion. He found Lisa waiting in a quiet corner of the station's bar, nursing a cup of synthetic coffee. "You look terrible," Jake said, sliding into the seat across from her. Lisa managed a weak smile. "Thanks. You always know what to say to a lady." Her expression grew serious. "Jake, we have a problem. A big one." She pulled out a datapad and showed him images of destroyed space stations and burning planets. The destruction was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Entire cities reduced to glass, orbital platforms twisted into metal sculptures. "The Zephyrian Empire," Lisa said. "They've started moving into Confederate space, 3 systems gone in the past month. The Confederation Council is calling it a minor border dispute." Jake studied the images. Each destroyed world represented millions of lives lost. "Minor dispute? This looks like total war." "That's because it is," Lisa said. "The Zephyrians don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They just destroy everything and move on to the next target." The bar around them filled with the usual mix of species that made up the Confederation. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians with their ancient wisdom and slow, careful movements. The militaristic Centauri with their rigid postures and formal uniforms. A few other races Jake recognized but couldn't pronounce the names of. None of them seemed worried about the war. "What does Earth Command want to do about it?" Jake asked. Lisa's jaw tightened. "Admiral Peter Kane offered our help to the Confederation Council yesterday. He proposed some new tactical ideas, ways to fight that might work against the Zephyrians. And they laughed at him." Lisa's voice carried years of frustration. The Altarian representative said humans were too young and primitive to understand real warfare. The Centauri admiral told Kane that his species had been fighting wars for 1,000 years before humans discovered fire. Jake felt a familiar anger building in his chest. It was the same feeling he got every time the other races treated humans like children playing with toy soldiers. "So what's the plan? Wait for the Zephyrians to reach Earth?" "The Council believes their energy shields and plasma weapons make them invincible," Lisa said. "They're planning to meet the Zephyrian fleet in a traditional battle formation. Line up their ships, trade shots until one side breaks." A news report played on the bar's main screen, showing Confederate Admiral Zex Thera of the Centauri Republic giving a confident speech about the strength of their combined fleets. The alien's forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke about the superiority of Confederation technology. Jake watched the Admiral's performance with growing unease. "Lisa, when was the last time any of these species fought a real war?" "The Centauri fought the Rigel Rebellion about 50 years ago," Lisa said. "It lasted 6 months, very formal. Both sides agreed to battle times and locations. The Altarians haven't had a major conflict in over 2 centuries. "And the Zephyrians?" Lisa's expression darkened. "They've been conquering and destroying worlds for the past 500 years. They're not interested in formal battles or honor codes. They're killers." Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Wright sat in her office at the Global Defense Institute, surrounded by stacks of historical records and data. Files As one of humanity's leading military historians, she had spent her career studying how humans fought wars. Now, with the Zephyrian threat growing, her research had taken on new urgency. Helen pulled up files on the Battle of Stalingrad, the guerrilla tactics of the Vietnam War, and the urban fighting in World War II. Every major human conflict showed the same patterns. When faced with superior enemies, humans adapted. They found new ways to fight. They used whatever weapons they could make. Most importantly, they never gave up. She compared these records to files on alien military history provided by the Confederation database. The Altarians fought like chess masters, moving pieces carefully across a board. The Centauri used overwhelming force applied in direct attacks. Every other species followed similar patterns of formal, predictable warfare. Helen's computer chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Kane. His weathered face appeared on her screen, looking older than his 60 years. "Helen, I need your expertise," Kane said. "The Confederation Council just rejected every tactical proposal we made. They insist on fighting the Zephyrians using standard battle doctrine." "Admiral, I've been studying the historical data," Helen said. "Every species in the Confederation evolved from prey animals. Their military strategies focus on defense and minimizing losses. They've never developed the kind of aggressive, adaptive tactics that humans use." Kane leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we might be the only species in the galaxy that knows how to fight a real war." The communication was interrupted by an emergency alert. Red lights flashed throughout Earth's command centers as reports flooded in from the outer systems. The Zephyrian advance fleet had struck without warning, hitting 3 Confederate strongholds simultaneously. The news reports showed the aftermath. The proud Altarian colony of New Wisdom, with its beautiful crystal cities, was now a field of smoking ruins. The Centauri military base at Gamma Station, supposedly impregnable, had been destroyed in less than an hour. Confederate ships that had seemed so powerful were now twisted wreckage floating through space. On the news feeds, shocked alien commanders tried to explain how their superior technology had failed so completely. Their energy shields had been useless against Zephyrian weapons. Their plasma cannons couldn't target the enemy ships that moved in unpredictable patterns. Jake and Lisa watched the reports from Kepler Station's main viewing area. Around them, miners and station workers stared at the screens in growing fear. For the first time since joining the Confederation, the member species were truly afraid. "They're not just losing," Lisa said quietly. "They're being destroyed. The Zephyrians aren't even trying to capture territory or resources. They're just killing everything and moving on." Jake studied the tactical displays showing Zephyrian ship movements. Unlike the orderly formations of Confederate fleets, the enemy moved in chaotic patterns that somehow worked together perfectly. It was like watching a pack of wolves hunt a herd of sheep. "Lisa," Jake said, "I think Dr. Wright might be right. These alien species don't know how to fight a war. They know how to have battles, but they don't know how to fight for their lives." The communication screen activated again, showing Admiral Kane addressing Earth's military commanders. Behind him, staff officers worked frantically at control stations covered with tactical displays. "All Earth vessels are to return to home system immediately," Kane announced. "The Confederation Council has requested that we prepare Earth's defenses as a fallback position while they regroup their main forces." The meaning was clear. The other species were already planning to retreat, leaving humanity to face the Zephyrian war machine alone. Jake looked at Lisa and saw his own thoughts reflected in her eyes. Earth had always been considered the weakest link in the Confederation. Now they might be the last hope for everyone. 6 months after the first Zephyrian attacks, the galaxy was burning. Captain Jake Morrison guided his ship through the wreckage of what used to be New Geneva Station, one of the Confederation's most important trading posts. Twisted metal and debris floated past his viewport like a graveyard of broken dreams. The Zephyrian war machine had proven unstoppable. Their crystalline ships moved through space like deadly fish, striking without warning and disappearing before Confederate forces could respond. 12 major worlds had fallen, including the ancient Altarian homeworld that had stood for over 3,000 years. Jake's cargo hold was packed with refugees from the latest attacks. Families clutched their few remaining possessions while children cried for parents who would never come home. Among the survivors was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a xenobiologist who had been studying alien species on the outer worlds when the Zephyrians struck. "Captain Morrison," Elena said, approaching his command chair. She was a small woman with intelligent eyes that had seen too much death in recent months. "I need to share something important with you." Jake gestured to the chair beside him. "What did you find out there, Doctor?" Elena pulled out her research tablet showing him recordings of Zephyrian battle formations. "I've been watching how they fight. Every attack follows the same pattern. Perfect coordination, precise timing, no individual initiative. The recordings showed Zephyrian ships moving in complex patterns that looked almost like a dance. Each vessel knew exactly where the others would be at any moment. Their attacks flowed together like water, overwhelming Confederate defenses that had never faced such perfect teamwork. It's beautiful in a terrifying way," Elena continued, "but there's a weakness. Watch what happens when something unexpected occurs." She showed Jake a recording from the Battle of Rigel 7. A damaged Confederate ship had exploded unexpectedly, creating debris that disrupted the Zephyrian formation. For several minutes, the enemy ship seemed confused, flying in circles, before regrouping. "They can't adapt," Jake said, understanding immediately. "Exactly, they're like a computer program running perfectly until someone changes the code. Individual Zephyrian warriors have no ability to make independent decisions." Jake studied the tactical data with new interest. In every human conflict he had studied in school, adaptability had been the key to victory. When plans failed, humans made new plans. When weapons broke, they found new weapons. It was basic survival. Back on Earth, General Sam Parker stood in the underground command center beneath Geneva, watching status reports flood in from across the galaxy. The Confederation Council, once so proud and confident, now operated from mobile command ships that jumped from system to system ahead of the Zephyrian advance. "General," his aide called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Council." The main screen showed 3 alien leaders looking exhausted and desperate. Admiral Zexthara's forearms trembled as he spoke, while the Altarian counselors' blue skin had faded to an unhealthy pale color. "General Parker," the Altarian said, "the Council has decided to make Earth the primary defensive position for the inner systems. We need time to evacuate our populations and regroup our forces." Parker kept his expression neutral, but inside he felt a familiar anger. The same species that had dismissed human military capabilities were now asking Earth to buy them time with human lives. "We'll need full access to Confederate military technology and tactical databases," Parker said. "Of course," Admiral Zexthara replied quickly. "Whatever you need. And complete command authority over all forces in the Sol system." The alien leaders exchanged glances. They had never given humans real authority before, but they were running out of options. "Agreed," the Altarian said. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster led the 1st Expeditionary Force, Earth's first integrated unit combining human soldiers with alien troops. The assignment should have been an honor, but the reality was frustrating. The alien officers treated her suggestions like the ideas of a child playing war games. During the defense of Roosevelt Colony, Foster watched Confederate forces line up in perfect formations, waiting for the Zephyrian attack. It was exactly what the enemy expected, exactly what their battle programs were designed to counter. "Sir," Foster said to the Centauri commander, "request permission to take my unit around the enemy flank while they're focused on your position." The 4-armed alien looked at her with barely concealed contempt. "Colonel Foster, we do not abandon our positions. Centauri warriors stand and fight." "I'm not talking about abandoning anything," Foster replied. "I'm talking about hitting them from an unexpected angle while they're distracted. The plan has been set. We will not deviate." Foster watched in frustration as the battle unfolded exactly as she had predicted. The Zephyrians attacked in perfect formation, their weapons cutting through Confederate shields like they weren't there. Hundreds of alien soldiers died in the first few minutes. Only when the situation became desperate did the Centauri commander finally agree to let Foster try her plan. She led her mixed unit of humans and aliens in a fast strike against the Zephyrian supply ships. The enemy, focused entirely on their main attack, never saw them coming. The surprise attack saved the colony, but Foster knew it was too little, too late. The Confederate military leaders were too proud and set in their ways to learn from human tactics. On Earth, Dr. Helen Wright worked around the clock in her research facility, comparing human military history with alien warfare patterns. Her discoveries were becoming clearer each day, and they painted a disturbing picture of the galaxy's future. Every species in the Confederation had evolved from prey animals. Their ancestors had survived by hiding, running, or forming defensive groups. Their military strategies reflected this history. They fought to minimize losses, to protect what they had, to survive until the threat went away. Humans were different. They had evolved as hunters, as tribal warriors who fought other humans for thousands of years. Human military history was filled with desperate last stands, surprise attacks, and victories won through pure determination when all hope was lost. Helen pulled up records of the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held off a massive Persian army. She studied the tactics used by Native American tribes against European colonists, always outnumbered but never outfought. She read about the French resistance in World War II, ordinary people who became deadly fighters when their homeland was threatened. "Computer," she said, "compare human casualty rates in major conflicts with similar data from Confederate species." The results appeared on her screen, and Helen stared at them in shock. In every major conflict, humans were willing to accept casualty rates that would cause other species to surrender immediately. Not because human life was cheap, but because humans understood that some things were worth dying for. Her communication screen activated, showing Admiral Kane calling from the Fleet Command Center. "Helen, the Zephyrians have reached the outer edge of our solar system. Long-range sensors show at least 50 capital ships, maybe more." "Admiral, I've been analyzing their previous attacks," Helen said. "They always use the same approach. Overwhelming force applied in perfect coordination. But what if we don't fight the battle they expect?" Kane leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Every species they've fought has tried to match their strength with strength. Ship against ship, formation against formation. But humans have always been better at fighting dirty." The screen showed tactical displays of the approaching Zephyrian fleet. Their ships moved in the same perfect patterns that had destroyed every Confederate force they had encountered. "Helen, are you suggesting we can actually win this?" Dr. Wright looked at her research data, then at the historical records of human warfare. Humanity had always been outnumbered, outgunned, and underestimated. But they had survived everything the universe threw at them. "Admiral, I think it's time to show the galaxy what humans do when someone threatens our home." The Zephyrian fleet entered the outer solar system like a storm of destruction. Their advanced scouts reported the same thing they had found at every other system: defensive formations, energy shields, and conventional tactics that their battle computers could easily counter. But this time, something was different. The human ships weren't lined up in neat formations. They weren't broadcasting surrender demands or diplomatic messages. They were spread throughout the system in small groups, hiding behind asteroids and space stations like they were planning something. For the first time in 500 years of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire was about to face an enemy that refused to fight fair. General Sam Parker stood in Earth's war room, looking at the tactical display that showed 50 Zephyrian ships moving toward the inner solar system. Around him, human officers worked at their stations with calm efficiency. For the first time, since the war began, they were going to fight their own way. "All units, this is command," Parker spoke into his communication system. "Protocol endurance is now active. Forget everything the Confederation taught you about proper warfare. We're going back to basics." Commander Tony Blake received the message aboard his flagship Defiant, leading a small fleet of converted civilian ships near Jupiter's moons. His force looked nothing like a proper military formation. Cargo haulers flew alongside passenger ships that had been fitted with weapons. Mining vessels carried torpedoes instead of ore. "You heard the general," Blake told his captains. "Hit and run. Strike fast, then disappear. Make them chase shadows. The first engagement came at Europa Station. Blake's ships appeared from behind the moon without warning, fired everything they had at a Zephyrian patrol group, then scattered in all directions. The enemy ships tried to pursue, but the humans had already vanished into the asteroid fields. On the Zephyrian command ship, war leader Thexkar studied the attack reports with confusion. The human vessels had attacked with no coordination, using weapons that barely scratched Zephyrian armor. Yet somehow, they had destroyed 2 scout ships and disappeared before his forces could respond. Increase patrols, Thexkar ordered. These humans fight like cowards, striking from hiding places. But the Zephyrian battle computers had been programmed to fight honorable enemies who stood and fought. They couldn't process an enemy that refused to engage in proper combat. On Mars, Colonel Rachel Green turned the ruins of New Berlin Colony into a deadly maze. Her soldiers had spent weeks preparing, placing explosives in buildings, digging tunnels between structures, and setting up ambush points throughout the settlement. When the Zephyrian ground forces landed, they expected to face defensive lines and fortified positions. Instead, they found empty streets and abandoned buildings. Green's troops struck from rooftops, disappeared into sewers, and attacked from directions that made no tactical sense. Enemy forces are not following standard defensive patterns, reported a Zephyrian field commander. They attack, then retreat. They sacrifice tactical positions for no apparent reason. What the aliens didn't understand was that Green's forces were using guerrilla tactics perfected in Earth's jungles and cities over centuries of warfare. Every building became a fortress, every street became a trap, and every retreat led the enemy into another ambush. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked alongside engineer Marcus Webb in a secret laboratory beneath Luna City. Together, they were developing what Rodriguez called chaos protocols, battle tactics designed specifically to confuse Zephyrian battle computers. Their neural networks process information perfectly, Rodriguez explained to Webb as they watched test data on their screens. But perfection becomes weakness when faced with pure randomness. Webb nodded, understanding the concept. So we do things that make no sense. Attack when we should retreat, retreat when we should attack. Exactly. Their commanders can't adapt because they've never needed to. Every battle they've ever fought followed predictable patterns. They developed new communication codes that changed randomly, ship formations that moved in chaotic patterns, and attack strategies that defied all military logic. When tested against simulated Zephyrian responses, the results were encouraging. Captain Jake Morrison found himself commanding a battle group of the strangest warships ever assembled. His force included garbage scows fitted with missile launchers, tourist ships converted into troop transports, and industrial vessels that could ram enemy craft with their reinforced hulls. Remember, Jake told his captains during their briefing, we're not trying to outfight them. We're trying to outthink them. Every time they figure out our pattern, we change it. The Battle of Wolf 359 became the turning point of the war. Jake's unconventional fleet faced a full Zephyrian battle group using tactics that no military academy would ever teach. Some ships attacked in straight lines, others spiraled randomly, and a few simply sat still and fired in all directions. The Zephyrian formation, designed to counter organized attacks, couldn't adapt to the chaos. Their perfect coordination became a liability as ships crashed into each other, trying to respond to threats from every direction at once. When the battle ended, Jake's forces had captured 3 Zephyrian ships intact, something that had never happened before in the entire war. Admiral Peter Kane studied the captured Zephyrian technology in Earth's most secure research facility. What they found confirmed Dr. Rodriguez's theories about alien psychology. Their entire military structure is based on absolute obedience, Kane explained to General Parker. Individual warriors cannot make decisions without orders from their commanders. When we disrupt their command structure, they become helpless. The captured Zephyrian officers refused to speak, but their behavior patterns told the humans everything they needed to know. Without constant direction from their superiors, the enemy soldiers simply stopped functioning. It's like they've bred independence out of their entire species, Parker observed. Perfect soldiers, but they can't think for themselves. News of human victories spread across the galaxy through Confederate communication networks. On refugee ships fleeing the Zephyrian advance, alien civilians watched reports of battles they couldn't understand. "The humans are winning?" asked a young Altarian refugee aboard one of the evacuation vessels. Her elder looked at the tactical displays showing human ships darting around Zephyrian formations like insects attacking a large animal. "It appears so, child, though I do not understand how." The refugee ship's captain, a grizzled Centauri veteran, studied the reports with professional interest. "They fight like no species I have ever seen," he said. "No honor, no formation, no proper tactics. And somehow it works." Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Wright watched the battle reports with growing excitement. Her historical research was proving correct in ways she had never imagined. "Computer, show me comparative casualty rates from the last 6 human engagements versus previous Confederate battles." The data appeared on her screen, and Wright smiled for the first time in months. Human forces were taking casualties, but they were also inflicting damage on the Zephyrians at rates no other species had achieved. More importantly, human morale was actually increasing with each battle. While other species became demoralized by losses, humans seemed to fight harder when their backs were against the wall. Commander Lisa Bennett joined Wright in the research center, carrying reports from the front lines. "Helen, the Zephyrians are starting to change their tactics," Lisa said. "They're becoming more cautious, taking longer to plan their attacks." Wright looked up from her data. "They're afraid." "Afraid?" "The Zephyrians don't feel fear. No, but they feel confusion. For 500 years they've conquered by following the same patterns. Now they're facing an enemy that breaks all the rules." The main communication screen activated, showing General Parker calling from the Fleet Command Center. "Dr. Wright, we've just received a priority message from the Confederate Council. They want to coordinate a major counteroffensive using human tactical doctrine." Wright felt a surge of satisfaction. "Are they finally ready to listen to us?" "They don't have a choice. We're the only ones who are winning." In the outer solar system, the Zephyrian fleet regrouped after suffering their first real defeats in centuries. War leader Thexkar stared at tactical displays that made no sense to him. His forces had superior weapons, better armor, and overwhelming numbers. By every measure of military strength, they should have crushed the human resistance in days. Instead, they were retreating from battles against an enemy that refused to fight properly. "Prepare all forces for final assault on the human homeworld," Thexkar ordered. "We will overwhelm them with such force that their chaos tactics cannot save them." But as his fleet moved toward Earth, Thexkar felt something he had never experienced before in 500 years of conquest. For the first time in his long military career, he wasn't certain of victory. The humans had done something no other species had ever accomplished. They had made the unstoppable Zephyrian Empire doubt itself. The final battle for the galaxy began in the Vega system, where the Zephyrian Empire had built their largest staging ground. Admiral Peter Kane stood on the bridge of the newly built human dreadnought Constitution, looking at the largest fleet ever assembled in known history. Ships from every Confederate species surrounded him. Altarian vessels with their flowing designs, angular Centauri warships, and dozens of other alien craft. But at the center of the formation were human ships, and every vessel in the fleet followed human battle plans. "All units, this is Admiral Kane," he spoke into the communication system. "Today we don't just fight for Earth or the Confederation. We fight to show the galaxy that no empire can conquer the spirit of free people." Captain Jake Morrison commanded a battle group of mixed human and alien vessels. His flagship, the converted cargo hauler New Horizon, looked tiny beside the massive alien dreadnoughts, but Jake had learned that size didn't matter in war. What mattered was the willingness to do whatever it took to win. "Remember," Jake told his captains, "we're not fighting their kind of battle. We create chaos, we adapt, and we never give up." The Zephyrian fleet was the largest they had ever assembled. Over 200 crystalline warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready to deliver the killing blow that would end the war. War leader Thexkar had brought every available ship to ensure total victory. "Begin the attack," Thexkar ordered from his command vessel. Show these primitives the power of the Empire. But instead of meeting the Zephyrian advance with a traditional battle line, Kane's fleet scattered in all directions. Ships dove toward planets, hid behind moons, and spread throughout the system in patterns that looked completely random. The Zephyrian battle computers tried to calculate the human strategy, but there was no strategy to calculate. Every ship group had been given different orders, different targets, and different timelines. It was organized chaos on a scale the universe had never seen. On the ground, Colonel Rachel Green led the assault on the Zephyrian command world. Her forces included human Marines alongside alien soldiers who had finally learned to fight like humans. They moved through the enemy base like water flowing around rocks, never stopping, never following predictable paths. The Zephyrian Imperial Guard, the Empire's elite warriors, faced an enemy unlike anything in their training. Green's troops used explosives made from captured alien technology, fought hand-to-hand when ammunition ran out, and turned every defeat into a new opportunity to attack. Command: This is Ground Team Leader. Green reported as her forces reached the main command center. The enemy is retreating. They're abandoning their positions. It was the first time in 500 years that Zephyrian forces had retreated from ground combat. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the battle from the research ship Discovery, monitoring Zephyrian communication networks with equipment designed by Marcus Webb. What she saw amazed her. "Marcus, look at this," she called out, pointing to her screens. "Their command structure is falling apart. The Zephyrian fleet, designed to work as one perfect machine, was breaking down as human attacks disrupted their coordination. Individual, ship commanders never trained to think for themselves, began making mistakes as they lost contact with their superiors." Webb smiled as he watched enemy formations dissolve into confusion. 500 years of breeding independence out of their species, and now it's coming back to hurt them. Dr. Helen Wright broadcast human war songs and battle cries across Zephyrian communication channels from her psychological warfare station. The effect on enemy morale was devastating. A species that had never known defeat was experiencing something completely alien to them: the fear of losing. Unknown concepts detected in enemy communications, reported a Zephyrian intelligence officer. They broadcast sounds that served no tactical purpose, but the sounds did serve a purpose. Human voices singing about freedom, about home, about never surrendering, filled the alien ships with confusion and something they had no word for: doubt. The space battle raged for hours, but it wasn't really one battle. It was hundreds of small fights happening simultaneously throughout the system. Human and alien ships worked together, but not in the formal way the enemy expected. They improvised, adapted, and supported each other like members of a large, chaotic family. Captain Morrison found himself in a running fight with 3 Zephyrian cruisers. His small task force shouldn't have stood a chance, but they used tactics that made no sense to the enemy. They attacked when they should have retreated, split up when they should have stayed together, and somehow managed to destroy 2 enemy ships while losing none of their own. "This is impossible," muttered the Zephyrian ship commander as he watched human vessels perform maneuvers that violated every principle of space combat. The turning point came when Admiral Kane coordinated a simultaneous attack on the Zephyrian command ship. Instead of one massive assault, he ordered 12 separate strike forces to attack from different directions at different times, creating a rolling wave of chaos that the enemy couldn't counter. War leader Thexkar watched his perfect battle formation crumble around him. His ships were superior in every way, but they couldn't fight an enemy that refused to follow the rules of warfare. "All units fall back to secondary positions," he ordered, speaking words that no Zephyrian commander had ever said before. But his forces couldn't fall back properly because they had never learned how to retreat. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming victory or glorious death. Organized withdrawal was not in their programming. Colonel Green's ground assault reached the Zephyrian command center just as the space battle turned in humanity's favor. Her troops faced the Empire's best warriors in hand-to-hand combat inside the enemy's most secure facility. The Zephyrian Imperial Guard fought with perfect technique and superior strength, but they had never faced opponents who simply refused to die. When human Marines were wounded, they kept fighting. When they ran out of ammunition, they used whatever weapons they could find. When all seemed lost, they found new reasons to keep going. Enemy forces display irrational behavior, reported a Zephyrian officer. They continue fighting despite tactical defeat. Green herself fought the Zephyrian field commander in the central control room. The alien warrior was faster, stronger, and better trained, but Green had something the enemy had never encountered: the absolute refusal to surrender. When the alien commander finally fell, the entire Zephyrian defense network collapsed. For Yi, the first time in their history, the Empire's ground forces surrendered. The space battle ended not with a dramatic explosion, but with something more devastating to Zephyrian morale. Their remaining ships simply stopped fighting. War leader Thexkar, faced with a type of warfare his species couldn't understand, did something that no Zephyrian commander had ever done. He surrendered. Human Admiral Kane. Thexkar's voice came. Across the communication channels, the Zephyrian Empire requests terms for ending hostilities. The galaxy fell silent. An empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds that had never known defeat had been broken by a species they had dismissed as primitive and weak. Admiral Kane stood on his bridge, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships that had somehow achieved the impossible. Around him, officers from a dozen different species worked together with an efficiency that would have amazed their ancestors. "Dr. Wright," Kane said into his communication device, "I think you were right about human warfare. We never learned to give up." Helen Wright watched the victory reports from her research station on Earth. The numbers told an incredible story. Humanity, the weakest member of the Galactic Confederation, had not only stopped the Zephyrian Empire but had taught the rest of the galaxy how to fight for their freedom. Captain Morrison received new orders as the battle ended. Instead of returning to cargo runs, he was being promoted to Admiral Morrison and given command of humanity's first deep space exploration fleet. "Jake," Admiral Kane told him during the promotion ceremony, "Earth isn't the weak link anymore. We're the ones the galaxy looks to for protection." The Galactic Confederation was reformed in the months that followed, but this time Earth wasn't asking for membership. The other species were asking humans to lead them. The Zephyrian Empire, broken by their first real defeat, began the slow process of learning what humans had always known: that true strength comes not from perfect coordination or superior weapons, but from the refusal to surrender when everything you love is threatened. And in the depths of space, human ships began exploring regions of the galaxy that had been closed to them for decades. No longer were they considered too primitive or too weak. They were the species that had saved the galaxy by doing something no other race could do. They had fought a war not just to win, but to protect the idea that freedom was worth any sacrifice.